coronary arteries. We have the right coronary artery. It has two branches. More than that, the two branches that I'm going to have you learn. One is the marginal artery, and there are several marginal arteries, but we're only learning one. And the other branch is the terminal branch of the right coronary artery, known as the posterior interventricular artery. Okay. And then we have the left coronary artery. And I want you to learn two branches off of that as well. It has marginal arteries, but we're not going to learn the name of them. The anterior interventricular artery. And the circumflex artery. Okay, so follow along with me on your models. I'm going to show you the smaller picture, and then we'll go back and look at a larger picture. So here's the aorta, kind of covered up by the pulmonary trunk, so we're seeing through it here. Here's the right coronary artery. It's going to go around the right side of the heart like a belt around the waist, between the atrium and the ventricle. So on the model, yes, here's the right coronary artery traveling all the way around to the back of the heart to here. That's the right coronary artery. The two branches it gives off, running along the right border here, is the marginal artery. And then at the back, this one running down this groove between the right ventricle and left is the posterior interventricular. Okay, so it's going to be in the back. You need to take it off the model, the stand probably, to see it best.
Way down here.
Yeah, 61 on this one would be the posterior interventricular. So on the next illustration, again, this is from Netter's. The pulmonary trunk has been cut so that we can see the right coronary artery and the left coronary artery. On your model, the pulmonary trunk will be covering up part of the left coronary artery. So I'm going to diagram that on the board. The dotted line means that I'm on the back side of the heart. So we're looking through the heart to see it. Okay? So coming off the right side, we're going to have the right coronary artery. And along the right border, it will give off the marginal artery. So right coronary artery is number 1. Okay. The marginal artery along the right border is 2. This is still the right coronary artery, all right, even on the back side. We're still visualizing the right coronary artery. And then it terminates by making a right side bend, and there's variations. If you look at Netter, he has a whole page of different variations, but the most common is this comes down the posterior aspect between the right ventricle and the left ventricle and forms the posterior interventricular artery. So again, back on our images, this is known as the atrioventricular sulcus, between the coronary between the atrium and the ventricle. Here's the right coronary artery. Here is the marginal artery, okay, just going down the side. You can find it because it has this vein right beside it that turns and follows it around the back side. Now we'll look at the back posterior view of the heart. Here's a continuation of the right coronary artery. And then just under the inferior vena cava, it makes a right angle bend as the posterior interventricular artery, found in a groove between the right and the left ventricles. Now on the visceral pericardium, this is going to be covered with adipose tissue. You'll see the fat there, but you won't see the vessels. It takes about 4 hours to dissect out that fat. You had a question, Heather?
Is that number 3, the posterior interventricular?
Is it what?
Number 3 is posterior.
Yes. So it's a dotted line again because it's on the posterior surface of the heart. Okay.
This one is what?
So now let's go back to the anterior view. And we have the left coronary artery. Now on the models, it's covered up by the pulmonary trunk. So you can only see a small section of it. And it's only about 1 inch long anyway. So it's very short. And it divides, forms a fork, and forms 2 branches. So you're seeing just a small ½ inch of it right here. On the left coronary artery. So you can see that right here. See how short it is? And then it forms a branch that comes down between the right ventricle and the left ventricle, which is the anterior interventricular artery. So it comes down in that groove. So left coronary artery, again, is rather short, bifurcates, forms the anterior interventricular artery. And so anterior and posterior interventricular arteries are on opposite sides, and that sulcus, they never actually join, which is really weird when you consider how important the circulation to the heart is. If you did blood vessels when you did the brain, I don't know if you did or not, you have the vertebral arteries and the internal carotid arteries forming the cerebral circuit. And they join together. So if the vertebral arteries are blocked, blood can still get to the cerebellum via the internal carotid arteries. In the shoulders, we have 7 or 8 vessels branching off of the major arteries, and they anastomose. So the axillary artery is blocked by a clot. Blood can still get to the blood vessels in your extremities by going around through other vessels. We don't have that in the heart. This vessel doesn't join that vessel. So if there's a block here, blood can't get to this tissue by going the opposite direction, coming through the posterior interventricular. It would make sense if it did. Cardiovascular exercise can cause multiple vessels to be formed, but they don't form an anastomosis. They don't form a union on both sides. All right, so anterior interventricular artery, and then this second branch right here is going to go around, again in a belt-like fashion, we see here, and form the circumflex artery. This is another marginal artery, but you don't need to know that one. So again, the dotted line means it's going around the back.
Oh, there it is.
And so this is the circumflex artery.